am I missing something?
Just a discussion about
The public standards and state aid update.
Where?
The revision to make
Thank you for that,
about
Bruce.
art donations.
Mhm.
so the art donation is the last action item.
Is
but-
the last action item.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to leave you in the lurch for a vote. And in our bylaws, did it say anything about having proxies?
We don't allow proxies, Elsie.
Okay, okay.
But you are entitled to appoint a designee, essentially someone to serve in your stead.
Sure. Sure.
Either way is great. Actually, I love having you here. So
Well, hopefully I add something. we all add some spice somewhere in our lives. So that's good. Well, I do apologize again. And like I tried to add some humor into the budget process, it is really challenging. I mean, I do more Zooms. I do more cell phone conversations with the legislature than I've ever done before.
Yeah.
But it's still a flow of communication. So that's just how that is. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and Zoom off, and I wish you all the best. So
Thank you, Elsie.
thank you for all that you do.
It was nice seeing you. I look forward to seeing you in person.
Of course, same as well. Thank you. Stay
All right.
well.
Bye-bye.
Stay well. I very much enjoyed the movie about him painting that landscape.
Isn't that amazing? Just to watch the process.
Pretty mind-boggling, actually.
Yeah.
My favorite thing like that, I think, is years ago I saw online someone had ridden sort of on a bicycle, the standard route across the United States. It was the bicentennial route, and they had it must have had one of these, what are these little cameras called?
The starts with a G, right?
Yeah,
GoPro or something.
GoPro.
Thank
Yeah.
you. So someone had put a GoPro on the handlebars and or something like that, and set it to take a couple images every minute or whatever the interval was. And so you got this right across the country in under 10 minutes. And there's enough dwell for each of the pictures that you could kind of see. You kind of get this impression, but of what that place looked like. But there was also this flow, and remember the Great Plains were sort of very much alike for a while, even though they were moving. And then it was kind of fun.
Right on time. I can't believe it.
Fabulous.
I didn't even try, honestly.
You're just naturally virtuous, Connie.
If you got it, Bruce.
Got it in one. Okay, 5 minutes after 11, let's kind of reconvene. That's the word I was looking for before. And Jenny, do you want to kind of walk us through this next group of bullets, the public library standards and state updates? If you would,
I
please.
do, and there's a lot of information there, and it's all related, but there's a couple key points that I want to make. First, again, Pam is with us. We wanted to just share a status update with all of you on the public comment process on the revision of the public library standards. Something we've talked about at several meetings now. Again, that process is ongoing. Planning to continue to collect public comments throughout the spring, and our plan is to bring back any further revisions to the public library standards to your June meeting to ask the commission to take the next action, which would be to formally move the standards into the administrative rules process. So there's information there, again, a current draft of the standards that's being discussed and proposed. as well as an overview of the public comment process that staff are going through right now. Pam's available to answer any questions that you might have about that process. And then I did want to have a little bit lengthier conversation about the current impact to state aid related to the decennial census. But let me just first ask if there's any questions about where we are in the public library standards update process.
Is there any concern, lingering concern in the library community about sort of our trajectory here?
I think we have a meeting coming up with the task force to address a couple of additional questions that have been raised. But, you know, I think we will continue to face questions about whether or not we're creating challenges, especially for some of the smaller libraries. And that will be something that we'll continue to need to talk about. I think we've constructed the revised standards in such a way that most of their concerns have been addressed. But I also think we shouldn't set the bar so low that we're not accomplishing anything with the standards.
Like the Red Queen says, you have to run very fast indeed to stay in the same place.
So again, that's just an update for you. More discussion in April and then further action in June.
And once we come to June, that'll be part of the whole, the standard sort of administrative rules process where there'll be further opportunity for public comment and so forth.
Exactly.
Okay. Talk to us about census.
well, darn Ken was the one that sort of raised this question in our minds at your December meeting. So we provided for you in your meeting materials the current draft of, or the current administrative rules that point to the decennial census as the basis. It has two roles in how we award state aid. First, Montana's statute determines that the amount of state aid distributed to libraries is 40 cents per capita based on the decennial census, the official decennial census. So that sets the dollar amount in statute that's appropriated. And then there is this administrative rule that sets the formula for how that total amount of state aid is allocated to all of the libraries. And that's the per capita per square mile formula that you hear us talk about, and that too takes into account decennial census numbers at the more granular population level. So once the official census count for Montana is released, I don't know if they're still targeting end of March for that release or not, we should know the total amount of dollars that will be distributed in state aid. What remains to be seen is the impact on the population counts for how that formula is then used to determine how much each individual library receives. And others on this call can speak more effectively about differential privacy and what it is and what some of the concerns are, but sort of at a really high level, there's always this balance within the US Census to protect individual privacy and to not disclose demographic information at a granular enough level where you could identify individuals. So say in a census block, there might be an African-American family, and there might just be one African-American family in that census block, which could theoretically happen in Montana. With just basic demographic information released, you could individually identify that family. So differential privacy is a process the census goes through to kind of fuzz that information so that individual privacy is still preserved. the census is considering changes to how they enact differential privacy that has created significant concern about how that will impact population counts for smaller jurisdictions and more rural jurisdictions. That's created some concern about implications for formulas such as this that are based on a per capita amount, and negative implications for those kinds of rural areas. Again, we'd hope to have Mary with us today. We'll try to have her with us at your April meeting so that she can provide much more detailed information about what the concerns are and what actions are happening around the country to address some of these concerns. Ken or anyone else, I don't know if you want to provide more detail than what I'm able to.
That was a very good summary. I've been trying to think of ways to, account for it or mitigate it, and don't really have a whole lot of good suggestions. But I mean, as I understand it, this has not been done. This particular method is new to this decennial census. I don't think they've used, to my knowledge, they haven't used differential privacy in previous decennial censuses. Although they've used other methods of data swapping and such to protect that privacy at the block level. And it's, it is for this type of an issue, it's targeted for issues like when you're comparing changes over time in population. That's difficult to do, and technically you shouldn't typically do that at the block level anyway, because census tracts, which are, 1,500 to 6,000 people average, something like that, are trying to keep those roughly the same geography from decade to decade. That's except in super high growth areas like Phoenix and stuff where they can't really do that. So you don't really compare things, like how things have changed over time isn't so much a factor. It's this kind of issue like per capita, spending. So in my mind, the housing units, which, in Montana, a lot of single family houses, but you could more or less in rural Montana, you can think of that as one structure per housing unit, but often there's obviously condos and things, but housing units, I believe, stay the same. But so I don't know, outside of looking at historic data and kind of looking at where the variance is to see where it's different. It's basically made up data at the block level to protect privacy. So, it's difficult on how we could actually utilize that since it's really fake data, at that level. So, but looking back at historic, the delta or the change that's unusual compared to what you would expect would be one, option. Looking at housing units and kind of looking at density, I don't know, there's no good answer in my mind for how to accommodate this.
Of course, the problem is we use these numbers to take and distribute funds with the per capita per square mile. And so if we have made up data forming the basis of what we think that the populations, or what we're pretending the populations are, that may not result in a fair distribution of funds. So we have this letter from the Attorney General's office saying you really need to take and change administrative rules to reflect whatever method you're going to use. You can't just make up a method even on an interim sort of basis or a temporary basis. So this is something we need. What's our deadline again to get this figured out? The fall?
By September. So what we're proposing, Ken raised the question in December, and I went to Mary and said, boy, should we be concerned about this? And she said, yes, very emphatically, yes. And so we asked the question of Attorney Jeff Dowd about the flexibility that we have in adopting a different formula. And he rightly pointed to administrative rule and suggested that if it become necessary, we could adopt temporary rules to use a population source other than the current official decennial census. And so the proposal is that, and we don't need you to take any action on this today, but between now and May, our staff working with Ken and others would identify various sources of population information, including perhaps the 2010 decennial census, for example, or American Community Survey, or housing, as Ken is suggesting. We could run some different scenarios to see how use of those kinds of models would impact state aid distribution. And then this would of course involve a public comment process and involvement of the library community. Settle on some measures that we are comfortable with, and then in June we would bring a new recommended formula to you to move forward through that administrative rules public comment process to ultimately adopt as a temporary rule by September. So we'd have a temporary rule in place in order to distribute state aid in the fall. This all assumes that when the final official decennial census is announced, that there are challenges and concerns with that population distribution. And we might see action taken in the courts to challenge that population distribution counts, for example. In those circumstances, I'm suggesting that we would go through this process. If the decennial census is announced and everybody's happy with it, we could continue to use the current administrative rule as is. Or if the census adopts some alternate process in the middle of an administrative rules process, we could abandon our administrative rules process and go forward with the current formula. This just are steps that we feel are necessary right now to position the state library to be able to distribute state aid according to a fair formula yet to be determined, following appropriate administrative rules processes.
Kenning, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, Jenny, I'm just curious, what's the source of the state aid dollars? Is it actually state taxpayer money, or is it federal pass-through money? Because we always hear about how the census, affects how much federal aid we get.
Yes, this is state general fund dollars.
Okay, and then is there an inflationary formula built in, or you don't have to? It's not static until the next 10-year.
It is static. It's 40 cents per capita. That's what's written in statute. But we do have to periodically get that statute reauthorized. And at those points in time, we ask for an increase in that amount.
And this is a particular statute that sort of works independently of our other budgetary processes, but does take and pull from general fund monies to fund it.
Yes.
But in this context, per capita, what's the geographic entity? I mean, it's per person, but what's it? How is it actually measured?
I think it's at the municipal. It's at the municipal level, Ken.
Like incorporated communities, you mean, or?
Mm-hmm.
It's not service area?
So service area has some definitions, but it's largely municipal. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions?
Bruce had mentioned like, per square mile kind of a thing, but I mean, the incorporated municipalities are quite small in Montana, in rural Montana, compared to the overall population. They usually account for about less than 5% of the total area in a county. They often don't even include some of the people that live there that would think they live in town because of where the boundary is, and how they get translated. But anyway, the density kind of thing, I just wonder if it could be done at geographically at a broader level. About half the census blocks in Montana are under 1 square mile, and about half are well over 2 square miles or greater. In the rural areas, a census block in town, just for reference, in a city or a town with square regular blocks, is roughly 1 city block. It varies the number of people, but that's a relative term. It's kind of a rule of thumb. In the rural areas, they can be quite large depending on the density of the population. And we do have homeless people here, but most of them do live in structures. So, and those aren't differential privacy applied to the structures themselves. So, and I'm using structures loosely. It's where people live. It's not a bar. I mean, it gets this.
Yeah.
We don't need to go into details here. Go down a rabbit hole, but
I'm
It's a
going to
challenge.
quickly get out of my element in having these kinds of conversations. But my hope is, as I said, we can identify some potential metrics to use and do some modeling to see what it would do to the allocation to the different libraries, and bring you a recommendation of a model at your June meeting.
I'm hoping that you, Jamie, can take and play a part in sort of reviewing that, because your perspective as both an inhabitant of a more rural area, but also your experience as a county commissioner, I think would help quite a bit, making sure that we're getting just the right mix. Any other questions or comments regarding the library census per capita item bullet? Then Jenny, proposed language for public library standards in ARM, or have we covered that?
We've covered that. That's
Okay.
just the update for you on that process.
Okay. And ditto, we've covered the public comment process.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments, discussion regarding the header public library standards and state aid updates?
Just a sec. Sorry, everybody.
I'm very grateful for state library staff being deeply engaged in this, so that they can neatly tidy up a package for us to recommend, that we don't have to think of it ourselves. Thank you very much. Well, let's talk about the art donation.
So this is something different and exciting, something that I've not seen at the state library before. I've been contacted by Mr. George Van, who lives in the Flathead Valley, and he's a longtime patron of the Talking Book Library. He gives kudos to Sarah, his favorite reader's advisor. He's given small donations to the trust over the years, and had contacted me earlier this winter about wanting to make a donation. And we found sort of a personal family connection from when I was a child growing up in the Flathead that has prompted additional conversations. And I think it led to his interest in wanting to make a donation of art to the state library. As I understand it, he and his wife, Carolyn, who's now passed away, are great supporters of artists, particularly artists in the Flathead Valley, and Mark Ogle in particular, a landscape artist who focuses a lot of his work on Glacier National Park. And Mr. Van has the original of a large painting, The Confluence of Josephine and Grinnell Lakes. I included in your materials a video of the artist Mark Ogle painting that work. Mr. Van would like to donate this work of art to the state library in appreciation for our services. And his intent is that this be a permanent donation to the state library to be hung in a place of visibility, and that we retain it in appreciation for our services. Again, this is something that I have not experienced before. So we did a little bit of research with the Historical Society and determined that it is within the purview of the commission to accept a work like this. And we've gotten guidance from the Historical Society about what to include in a donor agreement that we would, if you approve this action, sign with Mr. Van. There are a couple of things to consider if we do acquire the work, just in terms of where it might be hung. We have authority to determine within the state library where we might hang a painting. But if, for example, we wanted to have it hung in the lobby of the Justice Building outside the state library, there is a public art committee for the Capitol complex that would have to approve that request. And then there's some other considerations for us to make, just in terms of making sure that we have an accurate appraisal so that it could be accounted for insurance purposes, making sure that it's displayed properly. There would probably be some modest costs associated with that. We haven't gone through the process of determining what those costs might be, but they could be funded from money in the State Library Trust. So the recommendation from staff is to accept this donation from Mr. Van. We don't have plans at this point about when we might pick it up, but sometime this spring or summer when it's more safe to travel and interact with people again.
Are there questions regarding this potential donation? Kenning? No?
I was just checking to make sure the lake is on the right side of the divide, and it is.
So are the terms of accepting the donation such that we are required in perpetuity to hang this painting?
Yeah, that's
we haven't created a donor agreement yet. The one thing that he stated was that he would not want us to sell it. He would want us to hold it, but we didn't talk about permanently hanging it.
So it strikes me that it's difficult to anticipate future needs of the state library. You know, 100 years from now, I would hate to have this painting languishing in some storage facility when it could be available to the public at the Historical Society or in some other public place. So I think when accepting gifts, well, I'll just say what I think. I think that we should be wary of accepting gifts with too many strings attached, because I personally don't feel smart enough to understand what future implications of that are. And I would want to convey this painting going forward in time, leaving maximum flexibility for the commission and for the state librarian to use it as they best see fit, and not to get the state library painted into a corner where, you know, it just has to be hung in public view and quack, quack, quack. I understand the bit about not selling it, but even that makes me slightly nervous. I can't conceive of wanting to sell it, but on the other hand, anything that ties our hands for something that's going to persist as an object for hundreds of years, I think is unwise.
Yeah, I think that's good advice, Jenny, from Bruce. I mean, you know, I've run into this situation too, where previous deans have made promises that, you know, then tie our hands, or, you know, just don't make sense anymore. So maybe it's possible to negotiate some certain period of time with the donor, and then, you know, just leave a future library director an out.
Any other comments? Yeah.
Have we ever, has this ever happened before that you know?
We have small original works of art that have been given to the state library, but not under any terms of agreement that I'm aware of.
You know, we had at the public library here in Helena, we had given a very handsome landscape by a established and well thought of Montana landscape painter whose name now escapes me. It was a view of the gates of the mountains, actually. And it was this huge painting and no one wanted it. There really wasn't a place in the library to hang it. So in my office, I had this fabulous painting. That painting now is at the Historical Society. They actually need a little bit of conserving and they were set up to do that. It needed a little bit special care and framing and protection so it could be effectively displayed to the public. You know, there was no record at Lewis and Clark, to the best of my recollection, for what you could do with this painting. So the director was faced with just sort of punting. And it'd be nice if that wasn't necessary with this.
So if the commission is interested in accepting a donation with certain terms, what I would suggest is that we continue to work with the Historical Society to get guidance about what options might exist. I'm thinking, for example, that we could request terms of 20 or 25 years that it remain hung in a permanent way, and that after that period of time we have the option of donating it to the Historical Society or just holding on to it, or perhaps selling it. I don't know. It may require communication with Mr. Van's descendants if they're still if we're still in communication with them, some of those kinds of terms. And that I think ultimately we would want Bruce, you as chair, to sign a donor agreement. So you'd have an opportunity to review and weigh in those terms.
Do other commissioners have any comments or questions about this?
I think that you're on the right path with revisiting the situation with the donor and looking into, what are the insurance costs? What are the fiscal responsibilities for the library to take under, like I say, with insurance costs or for threat of thievery or fire. But I think a conversation with them might give us more leniency if they realize that we're just not a nothing. We're a state agency that needs to have rules and regulations.
Jenny, would it be an inconvenience if this were tabled and it came back to the commission in form of a donor agreement to sign, and the commission could either agree that I would sign this, or the chair would sign this, or that the chair would not sign this?
I don't think at all. I think it's helpful to hear your questions and comments. And I think Genevieve and I can work, again, going back to the Historical Society, to get some suggested language. And I like Jamie's language about having the option to revisit the agreement with the donor after a period of time, and addressing some of these other questions, like about insurance. We could probably at least get some general information about insurance. We don't have an appraisal of the painting, so but we could at least talk to state insurance about if it were valued at certain amounts, what the insurance costs might look like, and that kind of.
So I mean, a parliamentarian, do we need a motion to table?
I believe.
Genevieve just went to Robert's Rules of Order training.
Let me look through my.
Genevieve, help.
Lay on the table. Yeah, so it needs to be, someone needs to do a motion and then seconded.
So I
Table.
welcome a motion to that effect.
Yeah, someone just needs
Yeah,
to.
I'll move that we table this discussion until we have a more specific proposal for the commission.
Thank you, Kenning. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Jamie, thank you for the second. Any further discussion?
We have to be very careful. There's a couple of times that I've worked with different entities. One would be the Bear Family Museum. And sometimes the trust board thinks that they have more power than they do. So we need to be careful about what they want with that. And if they are entitled, I'll grant that this is the person's artwork, but we need to be careful so that somebody else who thought that they had an interest in this doesn't come back after us at the point.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah,
Unless instructed otherwise by the commission, I probably wouldn't sign a donor's agreement where it wasn't being given to us,
Yeah.
having to hold or not.
I think the
We gotta-
donor also needs to realize that the commission, or whatever body it is that's receiving the item, actually has less power than maybe they think. Times change, as we've seen in these last couple of years. Public sentiment about artwork changes, and your building might not exist in another 50 years. There are all kinds of things that can happen that make it impossible to make perpetual promises.
Right.
Bet. Yeah, that's a really good point, Kenny.
And lawyers are expensive.
Lawyers are expensive. Any further discussion? All those in favor of tabling this item? Aye.
I
Aye.
All those not in favor of tabling this, say no. Anyone abstaining?
Did
Okay,
you want me to sing? Is that what you said?
abstaining. Yeah, I know. When you wear a mask, that's like license to mumble. And so I'm not wearing a mask. I don't have license to mumble. Okay, well, thank you very much. That seems like a wise course of action. And I look forward to seeing us. I wouldn't want the donor to think that we were ungrateful for the offer or anything. I think we're all excited about the offer. We just want to make sure that we're clear about the spirit in which we accept the gift.
Mhm. I think one of the important points to make to him is that, I would hope that we would agree that future decisions, well, we can work that out in a donor agreement, but that, we would, if we were to make a dramatic change, that we would involve him or his heirs in that process.
See, I wouldn't want to do that, actually.
Okay.
I think once it's given to us, it's given to us. And then we're just clear about the terms on the gift. Because I have a dirty mind, I guess. I can see all sorts of bad things happening that really makes it awkward. And I just remember how ill-formed and sort of vague the process was from that one painting at the Lewis and Clark to the Historical Society, which is where it belongs. But it could have been much crisper. And there was lots of room for bad publicity and hurt feelings and lawsuits and stuff like that, if I recall correctly. This is being recorded. Strike that. State Library report. Jenny.
You have in your materials the work plan dashboard. If there's any questions about the dashboard, let me know. I just wanted to go through a series of updates before we conclude the meeting. Just some updates relative to the pandemic. First, we've received guidance from the Department of Administration that agencies are not yet to begin plans to reopen to the public. So we have sort of tabled any of those kinds of plans at this point. Despite the governor lifting the mask mandate, we are still required to wear masks in our public buildings and in interacting with any members of the public. So a mask order for our staff is still in place. We're still thinking about how we might shift the orientation of our public space upon reopening, likely keeping that 6th Avenue entrance blocked and redirecting our primary public traffic through the lobby area of the Justice Building to try to manage traffic flow and some of those kinds of decisions. I imagine that we'll have lengthy conversations with staff about the nature of remote work, for example, and what that looks like as we come out of the pandemic. So those are the kinds of things that are on our minds right now, but we have not begun any kind of formal reopening planning at this point following the guidance from the Department of Administration. I also wanted to let you know, and some of this is in your financial report, but we did successfully expend all of the additional gear funds that we received near the end of last calendar year. There was $250,000 we had to expend by the end of December. And we used those to purchase e-resources for public school and academic libraries. That was a great partnership to support those different educational needs, and those dollars have been expended. We continue to support the hotspot lending program. We're receiving just wonderful comments from users about how well that program is received. We had testimony at our budget hearing from a librarian who lent a hotspot to a man who had recently moved to Ennis, and he had a meeting with an investor for his small business that he was moving to Ennis, and found himself without internet just minutes before that meeting, and what a remarkable service the hotspot was for him in that point of need. Just yesterday, we had an email from a patron in Rosebud County, from a novelist, and he said prior to having access to the hotspots, he would go and hang outside in the parking lot of the high school trying to use their internet, and how much that having the hotspot has changed his work and his interactions. So I think a really, really worthwhile effort. Again, we have funding for that program through September. Like Elsie, there is funding in the current proposed stimulus to support libraries. Right now, the funding proposal's been amended slightly. What was originally proposed was $2 million per state awarded to state libraries through the Library Services and Technology Act program. That amount has been reduced slightly. I think the total amount currently proposed to be awarded to IMLS is $200 million. That full amount was to be distributed to the states for the LSTA program. What most recently has been amended would take 11% of that $200 million and appropriate it to museums, and the balance would go to state libraries. So I don't know exactly what that would do to the overall amount that we would receive, probably somewhere between $1.5 and $2 million. So a significant amount of funds that we would receive. Some of the criteria are largely the same criteria for the previous round of stimulus dollars that we received. So specifically extending internet access through hotspot programs, investing in technology in libraries, investing in digital content to support online access. There's some more flexibility in the second round of stimulus to hire staff, for example, if that's necessary. So again, that's what's proposed in the House version of the stimulus package that was just passed by the House and is being taken up in the Senate. And as Elsie said, we should know by the end of the month what amount of funds that we receive. We're already, of course, having conversations about how we would expend those dollars. This is a perfect example of where I wish we had the organizational structure of the MLN already in place. But given the information we have at hand, we know providing continued funding for the hotspot program beyond September is a top priority. We have the report from the Gigabit Toolkit broadband analysis that we did in 2019 and 2020, and are looking at options to invest in internal wiring and cabling and refreshing routers and providing wireless access points to improve broadband access within libraries, and hoping to have some funding to increase actual broadband speeds in those libraries, continued investment in different kinds of digital content moving forward and so forth. So more to come there. We did also receive our official FY21 Library Services and Technology Act Award. So this is our regular annual appropriation. That amount is $1,242,000. So about a $40,000 increase over our award from last year. And so as we start working with the staff and the Network Advisory Council to build a library development budget for next year, it's that dollar amount, that 1.24 million, that we'll be keeping in mind, and you'll see that budget proposal in June. And then finally, just for your awareness, there is a bill started in the Senate called the Build America's Library Act. And this would provide $10 million in funding for each state for library construction and remodeling in each state. So library construction used to be funded through what was at that time called the Library Services and Construction Act. That was changed what, about a couple decades ago to Library Services and Technology Act. So this would be the first federal funding for construction in that period of time. Montana does not have a library construction program. 15 other states do. So were this act to be passed and this funding awarded, it would be a significant effort for us to create a construction program at the state library and award grants to libraries to help them with planning and actual building and remodeling and other kinds of physical facility related needs. I think everybody's sort of thinking that this act is not likely to pass this Congress, but it's getting quite a bit of attention and either has the potential of being rolled into other infrastructure bills going through Congress, or has the potential of being a standalone act in future Congresses. I know that Senator Tester has not yet sponsored, but it is something that he's taking a look at. Any questions about the pandemic or response or stimulus funding?
This is Ken. I don't have a question, but just so everybody, just an FYI, the FCC at the national level voted on Thursday to provide additional subsidies to low-income individuals and Native Americans for broadband. It's $50 a month for low income, and they're studying it a little further, but it's supposed to happen fairly quickly. It's also with COVID funding, stimulus funding, and it's for folks on Pell Grants and things like that, and other ways to measure it. So, which is helpful.
Yep. Have some more procurement updates for you, a couple in particular, and then a handful of others I want to make note of. The contract for the platform for the Montana Memory Project is being awarded to a company called Recollect, and that contract is circulating for signatures at this point. So with this change, we'll be moving off of the Content DM platform and adopting Recollect's system and beginning that migration process just as soon as that contract is signed, with the hopes of concluding migration by the end of June. So that was the procurement that sort of went on and on. We had to go through 2 rounds of RFPs to get to this point, but I know staff are really excited about making this move. So we're glad to almost have those signatures inked. The Montana Shared Catalogs contract with Cersei Dynex concludes June 30th of 2022. So we've got a little less than 18 months to go through a procurement process for the Montana Shared Catalog. Given the lengthy time we've seen in these other procurement processes and just how significant a procurement this is in the terms of the number of libraries it touches and the number and nature of services involved, we felt it was prudent to begin that process as soon as possible. So Kara's been working with members of the Montana Shared Catalog and an ad hoc committee to draft an RFI at this point. That RFI is nearing completion and will be turned over to John in the next week or two to be issued so that we can get a sense of what the landscape looks like for integrated library systems providers before going out to a full RFP. So we'll be hearing more about that process really over the next 18 months. And then additionally, we're about to release an RFI for Courier Services. We've been fairly dissatisfied with the current courier that's moving physical materials around the state. A number of libraries have dropped out and others have expressed significant concern about the ability of the current courier to maintain the service levels that are required in our current contract. And so that and the fact that the courier isn't right now serving all areas of the state are reasons for us to move forward with an RFI and hopefully in the future an RFP to provide better courier services to libraries. So again, that RFI should launch here in the next week or two. And then we are proceeding also with the rebranding procurement to hire a contractor to help us with that rebranding process that you authorized at your December meeting. John and Melissa, with input from Connie, thank you, Connie, and I have been working on that procurement. And right now we're in the process of receiving and addressing feedback from the State Procurement Bureau before that rebranding RFP is issued here in the next couple of weeks. So
And the
lots of
rebranding
procurement activities.
The
sorry?
rebranding, just for clarification, Jenny, the rebranding would be funded by a state library trust
Yes,
funding.
exactly right. Exactly right. So lots of procurement work going on. Again, we're so grateful to have John and have made that investment in that particular office. The other update that I wanted to make, and kudos to staff, involves migration of our server environment from server 2008 to server 2016. When we hired Lee last May, this was one of the first things that fell on his plate. It's a update that we needed to make. We were behind in the processes to make this major migration, and he was able to put forward a plan and prioritize the work that needed to be done and get staff involved in going through that migration process. The need was to get the process completed by the end of December. That work was done on time, actually a little bit ahead of schedule. They had to migrate and decommission 7 servers. They completely re-architectured our file management system, and they were able to reduce the size of our storage footprint from 3.4 terabytes to 1.7 terabytes. So ultimately saving us the cost of some storage. They had to migrate between 50 and 60 websites, applications, and redirects through the process. They had to migrate 3 concurrent licensing services for ArcGIS, our FME server, and our AirDOS server. They had to migrate all of our FTP sites that we were using, and also migrated our intranet and internal applications. So a very, very significant undertaking that involved all of our IT staff with input from other staff throughout the agency. So just wanted to thank Lee for his leadership and all of the other staff involved.
Jenny, I think I heard you say you moved to server 2016.
Did I say that right? Somebody should correct me if I'm
I
wrong.
don't know what that means.
Evan, do you have
Evan?
some thoughts?
What was that?
Other than that, the operating system is Microsoft Server 2016. I believe we'd been on Server 2013. Just like with your desktop operating systems getting updated regularly to address security holes and things like that, we have to do server upgrades. They also have intermediate upgrades that happen, but occasional larger operating system updates are necessary.
Is 2016 the latest major version that they have?
I would, unfortunately, I don't think Lee is on. I'd have to defer to him for that. I'm a little, yeah, I'm not sure.
This is Lee. Actually, Server 2019 is now current. When we started, that had not been put into production at the Department of Administration just yet. So,
Got it. Thanks, Lee.
I thought I cut someone off at the conclusion of my comments about the procurement process.
That was me too.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just asking what's you said the name of the company was Recollect. Do they have a product name?
Jennifer, is there anything different than just Recollect?
Or they're just
Yeah, if you search for NZMS, it's a New Zealand's system. And they have made it, they started off with just New Zealand and then expanded to Australia and now have expanded worldwide. So if you search Recollect NZMS or that's going to get you there eventually. There is a page that's kind of goes over their services that I can share with you in the chat.
Thank you.
Jennifer, I wonder if you could send that link out to all of the commissioners, please.
I'll put it in the chat right now.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And Jenny, it might be useful at some future meeting to get with Lee and whoever else and give us sort of a 5-minute, 120,000 foot view of our IT environment, so that we have a little bit better feel to ask more specific questions.
Happy to.
Thank you.
120,000 feet is giving me vertigo, Bruce.
I know. I was afraid to say 30,000 because it gets down the weeds fairly. The weeds grow tall in IT. Any other questions about this this item, State Library report? Thank you, Jenny. Questions or comments? Let's move on to commission goals and objectives. We're looking at the October 14th. Help me with this. Are we looking at October 14th?
Those are just your final minutes that were approved at your December meeting. So
And-
those are just there for,
And there's certainly no action required.
no, yep, exactly, just for documentation purposes.
And in regards to the commission calendar, are there any things? Are there any places the commissioners need to be present to aid, besides our meetings, to aid in the good of the country here? Are there any gaps in our calendar?
So we do have spring federation meetings. Actually, the first one starts this weekend. Those are all occurring virtually at this point. And so we're a little late in identifying what federation meetings commissioners might be able to attend. Genevieve, could you bring up the calendar there? Just scroll down. Next.
Here we go.
So we have the Broad Valleys this coming weekend and Sagebrush next week. And then I think the Sagebrush is on a Friday, the 12th. The South Central Federation meeting is on the 27th. And so and then we have others in April and May as well. So if you could look at your calendars and determine whether or not you might be able to attend any of those meetings, we're happy to send out Zoom links so that you might be able to participate in those meetings.
Are there agendas available so we could tell what time we need to be present?
For most of the meetings, they're not available at this point, but they all get posted on the Federation pages. I'll drop the link for the Federation pages into the chat.
Well, I'm going to attend the NAC meeting on Tuesday next week. Is there a volunteer to attend the Broad Valleys Federation meeting?
I know
Jamie?
that one's short notice.
Yeah, Jamie, I sure appreciate. Yeah, that is extremely short notice. Thank you.
I was looking at the schedule a while back, and I was hoping that I could make that meeting.
So
Depends on how many cabs there are.
thank you. And then the next meeting is the Sagebrush meeting. Is there a volunteer to attend Sage?
Is that Friday the 12th?
That's right, Dalton.
Sign me up.
Okay, thank you, Dalton. Good for you. And then the South Central is, I don't know what the day is, but the 27th.
Do we know where?
Well, I think all of these are online, right?
Okay.
Yes, they'll all be online.
I can attend. Well, what day is that?
That's a Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah, I could attend South Central. Can we scroll down a little bit further to see April here? So thank you very much. So the next, so April, there is something that happens in April. It's the MLA conference
Do we know where it is?
online.
Oh, of course. I just want to get out and travel a little bit.
Well, come on down. We'll sit on the porch and I'll
Drink beer. You come on over here and I'll buy you beer.
Well, I was going to buy you liquor.
And I also wanted to draw your attention to the 5th and the 6th. Actually, it's the 5th through the 8th. The May Get Big Sky Geocon conference is going on. That too is a virtual conference. And then MLA's the following week, the 14th through the 21st.
Ken, were you planning on attending MAGIP?
Yes.
Can you sort of be our eyes and ears at that as well?
Sure, happy to.
That would be great. Thank you. And then in May, which is sometime, we have Tamarack on the 14th and 15th. And that almost looks like it's a in-person meeting. Is that possible?
Pam, do you know if they are planning to meet in person?
I haven't heard anything from them yet. Tracy would be the one who would know that. I can check, but I haven't heard anything.
They haven't opened to the public yet in the new library. I don't know how quickly the governor is appointing new commissioners, but if I'm still serving until someone is appointed, I'll try to attend that. But it might not be if they appoint someone else. My term is up in April.
Okay. You can't go until we say you can go. Sorry. You're serving for life.
So I'll pencil that. I'll pencil that in.
Thank you very much, Ken. And then what about the Pathfinder Federation meeting, which is scheduled for the 20th of May? Well, why don't we put a TBA behind that? And Jenny, would you have Jenny, would you have staff or someone let us know where to find agendas and this stuff for each one of these?
Yep.
So the commissioner who has volunteered for a specific meeting gets a note saying, this is where to look.
Absolutely. So I just want to double check. So Jamie, if you're available for Broad Valleys, is that what I made note of? Or you're
Yes.
checking to see?
And Dalton for Sage, and Bruce for South Central, Ken for Megap, and Tamarack providing, and to be announced for Pathfinder, and I'll put the squeeze on people for that if you wish.
And we also
And I
have Golden
think
Plains on April 29th.
Yes, Golden Plains on April 29th.
And why don't I see that on my?
Just scroll down, I think, a little bit more there.
I can't scroll. That's why I can't see it.
Yeah. So
Aha.
I'll communicate this information to Tracy and make sure that Tracy sends out agendas to the appropriate commissioners when those agendas are available for those meetings. They'll include the Zoom links.
And I'd be happy to work with Tracy to make sure that we have a commissioner assigned to each one.
Great.
Great. Thank you all very much. The most valuable thing you have is time, and you really are very generous. I appreciate it.
One other announcement, we'll register all of you for MLA. We're happy to register any of you for Megap who are interested. So if you haven't attended and are interested, let us know. And then also we do have a virtual conversation with the commission during MLA on that April 15th at 8:30 in the morning. So I'll send out information about attending that session. The two primary points of conversation at that conversation will be about the Montana Library Network and the Public Library Standards update process.
Great. Is there any comment from commissioners not relating to this agenda, but related to the business of the State Library?
Bruce, I apologize. I have one more calendar need for all of you.
Okay, fair enough.
A late minute request. In accommodating the approval of the Montana Land Information Act grants, the current mission meeting calendar, the meeting dates don't align with when we need to get those approved. This often happens. You'll recall we sometimes will have a telephone or virtual meeting just to take action to review and approve those grants. And those grants will go through the advisory council review process and be ready for commission approval the week of May 17th. And so our hope is that we could find a date for an hour or so the week of May 17th for the commission to review and approve those grants.
So that would be a special commission meeting.
Exactly.
Could you send out a doodle or something like that?
Yes. Yep. For sure.
I want to remind you, we're holding our symposium that week.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that the 18th and 19th, Kenny? Am I remembering that?
17th to the 21st.
Oh, it's the whole week. Okay.
Would there be a time that would be most convenient to you?
Yeah, the schedule hasn't come out yet, so I don't know. We're hoping to do 2 to 3 sessions per day, and it may only be 4 days, but right now we have the whole week blocked off. So
Could I ask you to stay in touch with Jenny to let her know if there's a time? I think we need to do a doodle and find a time that works for the most of us, but if there's a way we can accommodate you, Kenny, that'd be great.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I wonder too if like early in the morning might be a good time to do
And I'd even
something.
be willing to meet at 7 in the evening or something like that for a brief time to keep things moving along.
So we'll send out a doodle. Kenny, do you know when that schedule is going to be announced?
I don't. It's probably still going to be a few weeks.
Okay. If everybody could just make note that we're going to need to schedule a short meeting that week. And then I'll work with Kenny once that schedule's available to find some times that'll work. And then Genevieve can send out a doodle poll.
You said May 17th?
Yeah, that week.
Got it
Week
down.
of. Okay. Any questions or comments about anything from commissioners?
If it's about anything,
Please.
I do want to thank the library for the masks who were produced by Red Ant's Pants. And we are so close to deciding to have the Red Ant's Pants Music Festival this coming summer.
Oh,
Ooh.
It's not a done deal yet, but we are so close to doing the yes.
The good news is perhaps yes. The bad news is that attendees will be spread out over the entirety of Marr County to maintain social distance.
We should all have our shots by then.
Well, yes, indeed. Well, that's great. That's great.
But thank you for using Red Ant's Pants for the masks. That's pretty cool.
It is very cool.
they've been a great partner.
Mhm.
We did the same masks for all of our Talking Book volunteers as well.
Very good. Very good. Any other comments or questions for the order from commissioners? From staff, then. Thank you for your patiently sitting through while the rest of us blabbed. Evan, anyone? Do you have? Oh, I see a hand up.
Just had a couple of quick things. Thank you for your time. Happy that we're getting out quickly. Think of this as bonus material for those of you that were able to stay on so long. I just had a couple of things that I thought were worth sharing, both timely and possibly of personal interest. First, I'll try to upload a bird habitat brochure. The actual title is Montana Forest Land Management Bird Habitat Management, or sorry, Montana Forest Landowner Bird Habitat Management. It's a joint effort between members of the Montana Wood Products Association, the Forest Service, and the Heritage Program. That is hot off the presses, going to print, I believe, today. That'll be distributed. I know a number of your birders might find particular interest in this and sharing it through other activities you do. So want to make you aware of that. And then second, I'll put a couple of links into the chat as well. Give a little context. I believe that those of you that have been on the council or commission for a while will recall that as we completed the digitization of the items in the basement, our collection that was in the basement of the library building, we've started to reach out to other state agencies to discover other content that was out there, that state publications that we could get digitized. And as a result of that, Jim has been working to develop a good relationship with Legislative Services. We'd entered an MOU with them back in May of last year, I believe, to begin to digitize a significant amount of their content. And one of the first outcomes of that is the Lawmakers of Montana handbooks, also known as the Copper Books. I think we may have mentioned this project sometime in the last year, but I'm happy to announce that is complete. There was a very nice, let's see if I can get this pasted in here, very nice article posted by Legislative Services announcing the availability of this historical 70 years of Copper Books dating back to 51, now available through the Internet Archive, thanks to our efforts at the State Library. And then additionally, well, post the announcement, but also I'll put a link for access to those should you be interested. Also wanted to mention that we are now working on digitizing legislative journals dating back to 1864. So pretty cool stuff. You know, I know we can't tell you about every single thing we do here, but with the legislature in session, I just thought you'd be particularly interested in those resources. So thank you.
Thanks, Evan.
Fabulous. Any questions for Evan about those two extremely cool things? 3 cool things. I've already printed a copy of the bird things to show Sue.
Very cool.
Any other staff members? Members of the public? Well, thank you all very much. Thank you for a good meeting, and please stay healthy. At 12:17, let's adjourn this pup. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Good job, Bruce.
See you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Hey, Jenny, did we get some, we get a good batch of Mla grants? Have you counted them up yet or looked at them?
I don't, is Evan still on? I haven't gotten an update on how many, or I don't know if John's on
Okay.
either. I haven't
Right,
gotten an
it's always-
update, Ken.
Sounds good. See you later.
Bye, thank you.